sideways way.
Right.
Right? So one of the things that like I'm very cognizant of is like the things we're talking about here are really useful with somebody who's your loved one, someone you care about, someone you're connected with. If you're going on a date with someone for the first time, saying to them to their face, I'm just not into you that much. Yeah, you can hope they're going to take it well. If they're a fucking adult, they'll take it well. They may storm off and get angry, or they could try to fucking assault you. Like, there's very real dangers in the world as far as that. So some of this, recognize that, like, some of it's a discernment piece. The circumstances in the world are as they are, they will not be any different, at least at this time. So in some ways, you have to be able to ration that out. Like, if you have to tell the guy on the date, yeah, I think that went okay, I need to think about it a little bit, that's fine. Yeah, it's not necessarily direct, but it also is a protective measure, right? So there's a discernment. What values are you trying to uphold more so? So again, these aren't 100% all the time. Some of them is being able to do that. With the male question, first off, don't date women who don't want to see your feelings. Like, if you date somebody and they perceive you expressing emotion as a weakness, fucking dump them.
Don't let that negative stereotype build up.
Yeah, and the other thing is that way, then they get to see your emotional your emotional response of, I'm breaking up with you. Then they don't have to deal with it any longer, right? That's part of the situation is that getting clear on what, again, coming back to your metrics, or specifically what it is you want out of the situation. With dating, and I've said this 100 times, one of the issues we get into with dating is that communication breaks down. Does anyone actually know how pair bonding works? It's actually fascinating shit. Like, basically, when you meet someone who kind of gets your jollies going, what ends up happening is a couple things. So you're flooded with neurochemicals, a bunch of hormones, your IQ drops about 10 points, and for the wonderful purpose of breeding. Why? Because it needs to make you dumb enough to be able to make more people. That's why ancient cultures had all these taboos against sex before marriage, or before there was some kind of ritual or whatnot, because they realized once people started, they weren't going to stop, right? And so the issue is that in some ways, what we have to recognize is when a new relationship pops up, we often lose some of our capabilities. It's like you've taken head trauma. Not to be too blunt, but the truth is, it's like you've kind of been hit with a 2x4 accidentally. Being in love, being in that early pair bonding stage, that infatuation stage, not deep, true, long-term love that's very sweet and very kind, but like that very, very infatuated passion, must have you, must be close. That type of stuff is beautiful. It's wonderful. It's part of the human experience. It also is, you're also high. Like, let's get super quiet, like super clear, you're high.
That's not the real you. The long term is.
Yeah.
Because you're so caught up in the NRE, you're only seeing the other person for their best representative, because they're going to clean up, they're going to act better, and be the human being that you think you want. And that's why you're even more in love with them. And then later on, people are like, I hate them, because they really got to know them. Yeah. Or they let their weaknesses down, they expressed how they really are. And you're like, God, what did I see in this other person? Well, if we're more real in the first place and honest with each other, you'll have a longer, stronger bond with that other person instead of trying to be phony up front. And I know we all have that knack. We want to put our best foot forward when we meet somebody. We don't want to, see the other person in their pajamas and messed up hair immediately the next morning, But that's the reality of life. So don't go into a situation assuming and being blind. And I'm not saying don't fall in love right away, but have a little bit more emotional pullback to not get so caught up into that rush.
Yeah. I mean, part of it's just getting to the place of reality where realize that part of you is just, again, my favorite term is you're high. It's the same thing with subtle energy. You go to practice with anyone here, you're high. Like, you're going through certain states of being. Being in love is no different than any of those. And it's a beautiful one. Again, it's absolutely a human, wonderful thing. But if we don't retain our capability to stay present, what happens is that we get into this projective function. So you and I start dating, and what ends up happening is I start projecting on you all the needs and wants I have. There's never a discussion about what that actually means. The same thing happens on your end. And then somewhere within the 3 to 6 month mark, suddenly we're having arguments because there's all of these things we've assumed, all of these things that we now believe about the other person. My favorite one to hit people with is, did you actually negotiate monogamy? Was that ever an actual fucking conversation? Or was this just assumed?
Some people aren't hardwired to be that way, and if you're not clear in your intentions in the first place, that causes a whole can of worms opening up later on.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways it's like getting to a place where you can be super clear about what is going on with you, recognizing it, being in it, loving it, and then also recognizing that your image of the other person is not accurate. You're projecting a ton of different things, your own psychological baggage of it. If you're lucky. If you're unlucky and they're a particular person who shares trauma with you or is a good mirror for your own personal shit, then you get into problems where you start to build codependencies. This is where you start having to rely on your communities, your sanghas, your covens, to be able to help you kind of navigate that, either to stand it and make it a healthier, cleaner interaction, or to fucking ditch it, because your ability to judge is gone. Right? If there's a tie between your guys' shadows and issues, which often happens, we tend to look for people that complement that shit. We tend to get stuck. I mean, have you ever been in a relationship you expected to last a month and ended for 4 years? I have. Man, do I regret that. Yeah.
It's like, how did I allow myself to be trapped in this bad situation? And then you kick yourself that you've wasted years of your life being miserable when you realize, if I had just been honest with myself, and I don't need this person in my life to complete me, that I'm more powerful being me, then you walk away stronger and more confident, and you're a better human being for it. And the loser can go to somebody else who deserves them.
I mean, the way I would say is, like, so one of the interesting things is I notice patterns. It's one of just the tendencies I have. And so one of the patterns I noticed, I recently went through a pretty sizable breakup, and the pattern I started noticing was really fucking weird, is all of these bizarre power dynamics within quote-unquote monogamous heterosexual relationships. I started talking to a lot of the women on my feed or various individuals who I was friends with, and I started noticing this really weird pattern of people would say things like, well, I'm poly, and I'd be like, oh, cool, do you want to go out sometime? And then the response I would get was, I got to go ask my husband. And I went, wait. What? Is this like a kink thing? Is this like can you give me more information? I'm unclear. Define
the terms of your current relationship before you throw yourself into adding in another one.
And this is where we got into the problem, is like, oh no, so this is a particular variation of poly where you have another partner, but it's been through a ton of negotiation, and you're still sort of giving over free will to your partner. So there's not a full authenticity to what you want, because you're having to keep that security, right? Because there's financial situations, there's children involved, things like that. Okay, so you actually can't make a choice. You've chosen this relationship in which you've given up some, and so now I have to go through a third-party entity, like a goddamn lawyer, and then navigate this. The response I got actually was something to the effect of, no, and if he wants to know why, come talk to me. I'm not gonna fucking do that.
Why jump through hoops when you should just be honest in the first place and know where you're at?
Exactly, because the problem is we do this, and I see this in a lot of places where people will put aside their needs because of not wanting to actually like upset the apple cart, right? They don't want to tip the boat. I know tons of people who are in relationships they're unhappy in, but because the other person is the one that's financially stable, or it's allowing them to go to school, or all these other things, they're not able to really truly express themselves. My ideal, at least for relationship, is the ability to have one where I'm fully able to express where I am and what's going on. By doing that, trusting my partner, and being a little bit fucking vulnerable for a change, right? Suddenly these interesting things pop up, right? Recently found out that I'm into a particular type of thing I didn't realize I was into. Never would have happened if there actually wasn't that banter and play and communication. I would have never discovered this particular aspect of myself. How fucking interesting if I actually show up vulnerable and open and actually go with the flow in the moment. Then suddenly things get interactive instead of being anxious, shutting down, disconnecting.
You just triggered a thought in my head.
Go ahead.
That sometimes the most awkward and difficult relationship we're going to have conflict with, that we don't deal with, is not with other individuals or groups, it's within yourself. Because if you can't have an honest and open relationship with your own mind of who you really are, you're hiding entire facets of your personality. And you're not being genuine and in the moment, or in the direction of where you could possibly take your entire life.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, this is one of those areas where Corvus and I come from a slightly different area, right? He tends to stay into the material world, tends to stay in the focus of the self as that, which is useful. right? There's something to be said about recognizing the world as it is.
Grounded reality.
Yeah, and noticing what is defined as success and what do you define as success. Again, what is your metric for this condition? For me, it's a little different. It's what is going on as far as this concept of self. For me, the simple truth is this: there's no permanent self. It's not you kill the self or get rid of the fucking thing. Trust me, you can try. You can do a huge amount of hallucinogens, sit in meditation for days on end. You can kill the thing, I assure you, and it comes back. Again and again and again. It's like fucking roaches. Better to see through it. Better to see through it and recognize that it's impermanent, right? As I told people in my class yesterday, do you sleep? Because if you look at the actual way brainwaves work, alpha, beta, theta, delta, when you sleep, you're either awake, dreaming, or you're in deep dreamless sleep. When you're in deep dreamless sleep, delta wave consciousness is still happening. There's still awareness. Have you ever noticed that when you're asleep, even if you don't remember your dreams, you're still aware of some kind of time passed? Not sure how much, but there's still a sense of just sort of something happened. Yeah, deep dreamless sleep, pure awareness. You're aware at some level of what's going on around you. There's just no you there to contextualize it. You go away, all the alpha, beta shit disappears, all the theta, dreaming shit disappears, and all that's left is just pure awareness. You can access this in your day-to-day. You can access this through meditation, through practice. If you go deep enough in it, you start to see through the self as what it is. It's a giant stack of pickup sticks. Right?
So if I'm understanding you correctly here, for my own sake, for the listeners and everybody else, you're saying the idea of self is so fluid, you have to be willing to be flexible and flow like water through your life.
Well, yeah, exactly. Let me ask you this question. So, is it possible to just purely listen?
Yes.
Can you listen without an opinion?
That's difficult.
But you can.
Can.
Okay. Where is this deeper listening located at within the body?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So do me a favor. Shift your awareness to your head. It's not there. Notice that just things kind of get a little bit more thoughty and cognitive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then shift into your chest.
It's more of an emotional attachment.
There's now an opening, right? You're here, you're able to listen, right? So this is a tool you can use. You can actually notice, where's your fucking head at the moment? Are you in here, or are you dropping into here? Are you actually coming from a place of open listening? Now the last question I'll ask is this. From this place of heartfelt listening, who are you?
You're open.
Okay, it's a good concept. You're on the right track. Who are you?
So it's a very fluid and malleable aspect.
So you're going into concepts. So let me ask a different way. Do you know who you are?
I'd like to think I do.
So notice the dodge there. This is interesting. One of the things is if you actually come to that question directly, the actual truth is I don't know who I am.
We create it. We have to have some sort of framework, and this is where he and I differ. He focuses more on the fact that everything and everyone is fluid and change because that's what happens in the course of our lives, and that's true. I will acknowledge that. But I also come from a point of view that you can't be so inflexible and you have to define yourself to some degree and have a concept of self to know where you're going and how you're going to behave to other people, because if you don't, and you just, I've seen this happen in other people's lives, that somebody wants answers and definite responses for their emotional well-being and security of saying, what are we together? Where are you feeling? What are you thinking? And their response is, I just live my life day to day. That's not comforting to somebody on an emotional level that needs that security of knowing who they are as individuals and as a unit. You have to have some sort of context to put your view of yourself into. So I think you need to have a little bit of both.
Well, it's not even a both, and I see that little trick you tried to do there. The joke is that it's not even a both. It's that the fact of the matter is that, again, it's not getting rid of the self. Recognizing the thing is constantly shifting isn't about not having a solidified one. If you don't recognize, what you're talking about is the ego is trapped. I'm just now stuck in my whims.
Right.
But you can also look at the thing as a vehicle, right? If we're really truthfully honest, the fact of the matter is there's divinity in each of us. And if you take away all the bullshit that makes me me, thoughts, feelings, preferences, all that other stuff, how are we different? We're not. The truth of the matter is the same pure awareness, same witnessing consciousness that is in me is within you. Buddha nature, oneness, non-dual. There's no separation. If you get into that understanding, then the thing is really simple. All the self is God talking to God. It's a really useful thing. There's a great great book by James P. Karsh. It's called Finite and Infinite Games. And he points out this interesting theory. And he says there's only two types of games, finite and infinite games. A finite game is, the point of the game is to end the game. Right? That's the truth of all games. The point of the game is to end the game. Infinite games are games that are constantly done to keep the game going. And at the end of the book, he says the most profound thing, there's only one infinite game. We're playing it right now. Moment to moment, divine to divine, God looking at God. The ability to actually interact with one another is fucking profound. And yet we get stuck in all this conflict and stuff. So when I come back to this idea of a permanent self, no, there's not. You can see through it, you can change it. This fluidity and malleability, if you can really own that, suddenly things get a lot easier, because now it's easier to see the parts that need to be worked on, the parts that need to be healed, the parts that need to be shifted. Right? So this is a bigger topic, but in some ways recognizing that even just starting to be able to navigate your relationships more effectively can lead to a deepening of your spirituality, of your own traditions, your own practices. Right? This isn't just about getting along with everyone. It's about being the person you genuinely want to fucking be.
And if you can accept that of yourself and know who you are when it comes to that level, then dealing with other human beings, no matter what their emotional state is, you don't have to truly be affected by their reaction. You just have to know how to navigate around it. Or if you can, bring them to the same level that you are so you can have a better communication. Because it's up to you to decide, do you want to continue to have this problem with them, or can you fix it, or should you just walk away? Those are pretty much the three options you have when it comes to conflict.
I mean, a great way to look at things is recognize that every moment you have with another human being, even if it's in conflict, is a fucking blessing. If you think about the number of things, the number of permutations it took to make you, right? The fact that your parents had sex that night and not the night after, right? Or the fact that you have various ancestors, numerous came together, either through violence or through love, and all of these things somehow made it so you could be in this very seat today. All of this is miraculous. I look at partners and I say very clearly, this relationship will end in death or breakup. So every moment counts. What do we do with them?
I wish we had more time, but apparently we could talk for hours on this because we didn't even scratch the surface of just our quick notes beforehand.
You never do. I don't know why we did them.
So what that means to me is there's going to be a whole lot more for us to add when we start going over our notes and adding more content to it. And like we said earlier in the last hour, we're going to turn this into another book. So if you really enjoyed this, stay tuned to our Facebook pages because we're going to come out with Look for the Silver Lining or something along that lines to go with this next year. So everything we wanted to say is going to fully be put into it. And hopefully we'll just keep expanding on it. So
everyone, thank you so much. We deeply appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. If you have more questions, we're always open to it.
Yep. And if you need any information from us, again, there's copies of the Buddha and the Devil up at his stand at the merchants area. There's a couple up here, and there's cards for myself right here. So if anyone needs them, please feel free.